So we reached out to you, as we often do, because you have seen both sides of a case, defense and prosecution side. So you wear a very unique hat in that respect. So I wanted to try to better understand. We got a little bit of information yesterday in terms of the prosecution saying we have just a amount of evidence that we need to hand over to the defense, and we're in the process of doing that. But, so we got a little glimpse of there is a lot of evidence. We also heard that it seems like they're still in the process of collecting evidence and collecting witnesses. So we wanted to ask you, what do you think goes into building a case like this from the prosecution side?
The prosecutors are focusing on the elements that they would have to prove for these convictions, and in particular for the aggravated murder portion. So that is what they're going to be focusing on, is just to make sure, like, what evidence can there still be to help us prove identity, to help us prove intent, to help us prove causation, and to help us prove the aggravated factor, which is other people other than Charlie Kirk were at great risk of death to them. And so that's what they're going to be focusing on, and they have to, because in a case like this, with hundreds, even thousands of witnesses, you have to narrow that scope to what is relevant, to what's useful in court, to what can be played out in court. And so otherwise, I mean, this investigation could literally go on for years. Yeah. And that's in no one's interest to have it go on for years. Yeah. So they're looking at those elements and seeing, like, well, what's still pending where we can buttress those elements.
If you are the prosecution, what do you think is step number one to build this case? Do you focus on the aggravating factor? Do you focus on, and if so, where do you even start with that?
That's a great question. If I was a prosecutor on this case, I would be looking at the aggravating factor. The reason being is that when it comes to murder, it looks like a lot of those things, assuming all of this plays out well in court for them, and it looks like it probably will, when it comes to identity, when it comes to intent, and when it comes to causation, which are the elements to get to murder, that's pretty strong. Their most difficult element for aggravated murder is indeed the aggravated element, which in this case, they only have one. And that's all they have under the evidence of this case.
Which is what?
Which is that this individual had other people other than Charlie Kirk at great risk of death to them.
And that's what the prosecution needs to prove beyond a reasonable doubt for the aggravating portion.
Correct. And not only beyond a reasonable doubt, but to 12 jurors who unanimously agree that they've proven that beyond a reasonable doubt, and in the crucible of a courtroom where the defense is really going to be honing in on that. If I was the prosecutor, I would know the defense is really looking at that and is really going to build their case around that aggravating portion. So what the prosecution is likely doing is they are looking at experts, they're talking to witnesses, they're going to probably do a scene reconstruction, a bullet path reconstruction, all of these things, talking to other experts about this kind of gun, this kind of scope, this kind of everything, to buttress that case. They know that this is where the case is going to hinge, and so that's probably where they're starting off at right away, is trying to buttress that issue.
Is a big portion of proving that, if you're the prosecution, interviewing witnesses? Do witnesses need to say, I felt like my life was in danger? And would that be enough, or does that have to be proven more beyond just a witness saying, yeah, I felt like my life was in danger?
So witnesses would be crucial to them. Apparently, for example, the person that was at the microphone was not too far away from that bullet path. So having that person come into court and tell, like, what he was able to hear, what he was able to see, how close, maybe for all we know, he felt something, who knows? And so, like, that would be crucial. But the other thing that's going to be crucial is just doing a reconstruction where an expert can come in and say, well, from this angle to what was seen, to who was there, to what was placed, to the cameras. We have hundreds, and that's probably what they're going through, is all of these cameras and creating some kind of 3D mechanism where they're able to see this. And they're going to have a lot of resources to do that, because in this case, you not only have the state of Utah on this, but you have the federal government.
Or people behind Charlie could have been at risk.
Correct.
Do you think part of this reconstruction, they might try to argue, look how close the bullet, the path of the bullet went by X amount of people?
Correct. And see, that's the thing that they're going to have to prove. And not only just show that in a strong presentation, but in a way that's almost, hopefully, for their sake, not rebuttable by the defense, because you know the defense is going to come out, and this is where they're going to really focus on this too. So I'll paint that picture, and the prosecution, of course, knows this. The defense is going to go over this individual's background in shooting, his awareness of firearms, how long he's been doing it, maybe how many hours or how many days or how many hunts he's been on, what that scope looked like, how many times he's used that. They're really going to try to pin that down to make their argument that other people really weren't at great risk. And that's where the whole case is really going to hinge. And so that's where the focus is going to be right now with the investigation.
That's very interesting. What about witnesses? There were, by some estimation, 3,000 people there. We heard the prosecution say yesterday, we're still in the process of trying to find witnesses to let them know what the rules are that are being laid out. And they made that statement yesterday. How does that process work? Is it incumbent on the prosecutors to go and find those witnesses?
It's incumbent on the prosecutors to prove these elements beyond a reasonable doubt. And if there are witnesses that are there that can help them do that, then that's great. The court will, and the prosecution knows this. I mean, how many witnesses do you need to say, this is what I witnessed and this is what I saw and this is what I heard? I mean, you could literally call thousands, but then that's a jury trial that could go on for a year. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so they're going to need to make sure that it's not duplicative, because there are court rules that don't allow like the same evidence again
You
and
don't
again
need
and again.
50 people saying the same thing.
Correct, especially when it comes to elements. Again, the elements for murder are identity, and so it looks like what they're trying to do with that is an alleged confession, video, DNA, and those things. Yeah. So identity, you might get down with that. And then when it comes to causation or intent, you have the scope, you have those things, and so there's not a great mystery as to what all of these witnesses may have seen. It's all there on video. You know what I mean? Now you will need some of these witnesses, and in particular, you're going to need the witnesses that could have been in the path of that bullet or around. Those would likely be the key witnesses for them to bring to court to show that these were actually human beings. These are their faces, these are their names that could have been at great risk for others. Those are the ones that they're probably wanting the most.
And I get that these attorneys will have private investigators, I assume, try to track these people down, but there was no log of who was there.
Correct.
So that's probably going to be a bit of a challenge, finding these people, needle in a haystack, potentially.
Correct. I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of put out an all points bulletin that just says, for someone that was maybe 100 yards away, okay, that's something. But if you're in the diameter of maybe being within maybe 10, 20 yards of him, we really would like to hear your story. We'd like to see any video you may have and whatnot. So I can imagine something like that coming forward.
Yeah. Anything else from the prosecution side that you think maybe we missed or didn't ask that you think is important?
No, There is another element to this, and this will be both for the prosecution and the defense in terms of what everyone's doing right now. And this leads more into the defense as well, is that should this get to a penalty phase, which means that they were successful in proving aggravated murder beyond a reasonable doubt, there's going to be a fight there of aggravating circumstances, which the prosecution is also looking into, and then also potential mitigating circumstances, which I'm sure the defense team is starting in earnest. The defense team has their own team of investigators, and one of the first things that would happen in a case like this is to build that mitigation evidence, and that's exactly what the defense is doing right now.
So dumb that down for me. I'm just a dumb reporter. Yeah. What does that mean, mitigating versus aggravating?
So what the jury would be tasked with in that sentencing phase is to weigh everything that has been presented to them in trial and everything that's now been presented at a sentencing phase. For example, Charlie Kirk's wife would be there to testify, closest friends, parents, and then other people that were impacted by this. I would imagine maybe some students that saw this have had trauma, from this would be able to testify and whatnot. And so these would be aggravating portions. And then the defense don't have to just sit there on their hands and just see all of this. They can bring in their own witnesses and it could be maybe family members of Robinson or other people or possible, there's so many things that can come up in terms of someone's background that they would be looking into, whether it's school, whether it's medical, whether it's family, whether it's anything else. They would be looking to present to the jury these other issues that are mitigating towards him. And then what happens is that then the jury, once everything is done, and this is going to be a long trial, of course, then they go and they deliberate. There's 12 of them, and they have to unanimously agree on two things. One, does the aggravating circumstances outweigh the mitigating circumstances? And if they all unanimously agree on that, then they have to make the decision, is the death penalty the just penalty in this case, and they have to unanimously agree on that. So what the prosecutor's argument would be is that the aggravating circumstances outweigh. Then the defense's argument would be it doesn't outweigh, that the mitigating circumstances are pretty high, and that would be the battle there. And so that's another key element of the case. Those are the two biggest issues in this case: the aggravating factor about whether other people were at great risk, and then the penalty phase. Yeah. Okay, everything from what we understand so far, and he's of course innocent until proven guilty. All these are allegations, but if all that other evidence stacks up, the questions on identity and intent and causation are not terribly great for the defense and overwhelmingly powerful for the prosecution, assuming all of that comes into place. And so these two legal teams, and both of them are very experienced, very good attorneys on both sides. They know what the issue is. The issue is the aggravating issue, and then the issue is also just that penalty phase.
Kind of switching over to the defense side, we did hear Kathy Nestor, who represents Tyler Robinson, say yesterday, she said to the judge, listen, I'm still getting discovery. I'm still getting evidence. I don't even really know what we're up against yet. So it might be a little difficult to ask, what the defense might be doing right now at this point, but just sort of broad level. Once they do get all this discovery, sort of where do they start? Do you think they kind of hone in on that aggravated portion as well as part of their defense?
Yeah, I'm sure they already know that that's the thing that they have to clue in on. They're having their investigators focusing on that, focusing on his background and trying to develop mitigating evidence. Nothing that the prosecution has will likely be all that foreign to them. Yeah. It's just the overwhelming amount of information that's coming. I mean, I can only imagine how many terabytes, and literally just terabytes of information that are, it's probably in the dozens, if not hundreds, that are coming, because so much evidence was collected by two amazing entities, law enforcement in Utah and law enforcement in the federal government. That's a ton of reports, not to mention all the video, not to mention all of, like this long, manhunt that was a part of this whole thing. So the amount of information to go through is just simply going to be overwhelming. And that's just going to be a huge portion of this. I mean, a huge portion is the prosecution to get all of this discovery, to then parlay this all over to the defense team, and then as more discovery comes in, to also parlay this to the defense team. That's going to be a huge factor, and it's really likely going to gum up the wheels of justice in a sense, because there's just a ton that's out there. And so I would imagine it's going to take a little bit of time, for example, to get to the preliminary hearing, because the defense is going to say there's an overwhelming amount of information for us to scour through, and we can't just do this anytime soon. We have to go through all of it.
I want to be very careful how I ask this, because I don't want to insult anybody, but the question is Tyler Robinson is getting some pretty good representation from what I understand. Kathy Nestor has been doing this a long time.
Correct.
She's been a federal public defender, correct?
Right.
In her past. I mean, she knows what she's doing.
Right.
And Tyler Robinson was not assigned someone from just sort of like the local public defender's office. And again, I want to be very careful how I ask that question. I'm not trying to discredit anybody, but he has a pretty good team representing him, does he not?
He has an amazing team, and there's two reasons to have that. One, there is Rule 8 that just says if you are going to be representing someone that is subject to a capital case, you have to be qualified to do so. Okay, and not every defense attorney, of course, is qualified to do that. And without that being established, you can't even represent it.
And that's written in state law.
That's written in state law, exactly right. But then this is the other thing. Is the best thing for justice to occur in this case to have a conviction that will stand up over time, because there's literal decades of litigation should the death penalty come. It's important for Tyler Robinson. It's important for the Kirk family. It's important for the prosecutors. It's really important for justice and for Utah in general, to have someone that's effective, that's good, that's strong, that can point out issues. And so there's not all of these issues that are litigated down the road for ineffective assistance of counsel. The best way to eliminate all of that is that you have quite effective counsel right now, and that's something worth paying for.
Absolutely. And then one of the final things that I think about in this case is there's a lot of unique things. And one of the unique things I think about is, according to prosecutors, Tyler's parents were the ones that helped facilitate his surrender. Could we see them testifying against their own son?
That is such a great question. And I've been thinking about this a lot. Maybe one of the most amazing aspects of this case that would literally ever happen in a Utah courtroom could be his parents testifying to what happened. And it looks like they are really key and important witnesses to this whole thing, that they provided an incredible amount of information. There's no privilege as his parents can get out of something like this. If you're subpoenaed by the state of Utah to testify, you have to testify, you have to answer questions, unlike spouses, for example.
Spousal privilege.
There's spousal privilege,
but
there's not parenting
but not
privilege.
parent privilege.
Yeah, and so that will be really something else that will be incredibly powerful in that courtroom. I mean, we'll see how this all pans out, of course, and we'll see how that testimony goes. But those two are two of the most important witnesses for the state of Utah, and it happens to be the defendant's parents.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else that we missed that you think is worth sharing right now?
Yeah.
As this case is starting to be built.
I would just say it's important just to know that something like this is not going to be solved in a day. It's not going to be solved in a month.
Yeah.
Okay. It's going to take a long time. The preliminary hearing won't be set any time soon. Nothing in the next couple of months, of course.
Yeah.
And then that trial is going to be a long, hard slog, and to find the amount of weeks that are going to be needed for that's going to take a while to get there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, thanks again, Nathan, as always, for your time.
Thank you.